If you don't know that song, that's the Indigo Girls, one of the best female groups of all time. And that song is Galileo. Who can identify with some of those thoughts? With the overwhelm, does anyone else dive into the pool of spirituality and sometimes make it so complicated you're swimming in a sea of how did I get here and how can I fix this one? Boy, does the idea of past lives make that even more complicated. Right? It's not even why am I showing up like a schmuck in this lifetime. It's like, what did I do in other ones? How can I unravel this? How can I undo it? How long till my soul gets this right? How long have I been carrying this one with me? How many lifetimes, how many experiences, how many current relationships have I pressed off my good? Because of something I'm carrying around, some baggage. Really overwhelming, eh? Really stressful to think. As if it's not enough to deal with right now in this lifetime. Family systems. I don't believe there's any possibility, whether you call it karma, whether you call it past lives, whether you don't even believe in that stuff, whether it's all right now, whatever it is, I don't believe there's any possibility we could carry anything in with us in this lifetime or any other that is not a gift and a blessing that can be used for our emancipation and our transformation. I was just at a christening this weekend of one of my beautiful god babies. And you can tell when you are at a christening that we come in pure light. Can't you tell that? That we come in pure light. And as I was thinking about this talk, I thought, imagine that with this song and this idea and all this baggage and stuff. Just imagine for a second like a little baby and then all these, suitcases and all these bags, all these lifetimes of stuff to work out. That would never be in this universe of love, right? They would be more like flowers and balloons, like hanging from your arms and your legs, dangling there for you to unfold them. For them to, like a flower, right? Like a rose, that in its own time slowly unfolds and slowly opens. But the human perception, right, is one that sees in black and white thinking. That one that goes into this paradigm of this is for me, this is against me, rather than trusting the innate intelligence of the universe. I read a piece by Wayne Dyer in Living an Inspired Life, and he talked about how we came into being on this planet. And he says this, he says that we can see the seed materialized into what we intended to become under the auspices of creative intelligence, and it flourished with the assistance of that remarkable spirit that is responsible for all of life. The entire process of creation simply unfolded. During those months when we lived in the womb, it is safe to say that we were in spirit. We were allowing spirit to perfectly align without any effort on our part. Without any effort on our part. We were provided for entirely by a life force that none of us can completely describe or explain. He goes on to say, we can see that there's a force in the universe that is 100% trustworthy, one that we relied upon to get us here. It creates and manifests from a spirit of love, cooperation, beauty, and expansiveness. And it's to this flawless work of spirit that we can return in order to know inspiration. So what would it be like to live a more effortless life? To not make everything so serious, so complicated, so intense. We're not struggling and trying so hard all the time to get it right. I had a breakfast with a minister this last week, and we were talking about shadow work and transformation work. And she said, for me, it's really about how high is your metabolism? How high is your spiritual metabolism? How quickly can you take what is, what comes up, and draw all of the nutrients out for your growth, bring and assimilate all of the nutrients in your being, and utilize the energy that it has for you? Last week was about staying afloat in turbulent times. We talked about meditating mindfulness. We talked about praying twice as much. That if we're not praying, meditating, if we're not in our spiritual practice, if we're not spiritually communing in spiritual community, twice as much as we're worrying, reading the facts, trying to figure out everything, then we're doing ourselves and our world a disservice. Well, this week is about regaining balance. It's about rewiring the mind. It's about tools for turning turmoil upside down. Tools for turning turmoil upside down. Unity has been known throughout its time and expression as being practical Christianity. That it's not just a place to go on a Sunday morning to hear good words and then you go about your life. It's not just putting in time. But that it's about practicing principles. It's about activating spiritual truths. It's about exploring on our journey. And it's not about anyone telling us what something is or what to do, but we come together rather to create our own thoughts, rather than to see when something resonates like a tuning fork within us and we go, my soul knows that one. My soul knows there's a nugget there for me. That it's about bringing that into fruition. It's about being in charge of our own spiritual path and our own journey. But it's certainly not about being passive. So I was paddleboarding for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I actually did a pretty good job of it. I didn't fall, which I was surprised that I didn't fall, but I always thought it looked really cool, So, and I do some yoga, so I'm used to like the balancing poses. But I got on that paddleboard, and I was just thinking about turbulent times and thinking, well, I was really grateful, one, that the water was like glass. It was like glass. So there were no waves. So I didn't have to get that challenged. But even getting up and down. And isn't that like our spiritual journey? Things are thrown at us. We get triggered. We get angry. We have things come up. We have reactions that are less than compassionate, less than holy, less than sacred, less than walking around saying namaste to everyone and everything we meet. There's that Buddhist story about emotions, and emotions come knock at the door of your temple, the door of your home. And the idea is not to shut them all out, but to say, come on in, have a glass of tea. But we don't always do that, do we? We start rocking and then we fall in the water. So how can we use our spiritual practice to transform that? Well, I was explaining to someone that I had tried paddleboarding for the first time. I couldn't really remember the words, so I started calling it waterboarding. I was like, it was a paddleboard. Some of us spiritually waterboard. Some of us that need the hard knocks that just go, I like these blinders, right? And probably that some of us is all of us in some areas. It feels a little more like waterboarding than it does paddleboarding. But it's all about rebalancing, isn't it? And mindfulness is not about getting rid of all of the things that create turbulence. Prayer is not about praying away everything that we call in the human condition bad that could happen to us, right? A mature spiritual practice is knowing that life happens. And it's about engaging in a practice that supports us and a presence of mindfulness that we wake up faster and faster each time, that we learn to see it coming, and we learn to balance. But it's not about creating an airy-fairy life where there's no one that's going to die in my life. I'm never going to have a hard time. I'm never going to have heartbreak. I'm never going to have troubles. I have no blind spots. Try walking around with no blind spots. Your friends become waterboarding agents. Don't they? You find a person that knows their stuff and tells people, hey, here's my disclaimer. Be in relationship with me, be in family with me, be in friendship with me. Here's what you're going to see. I'm already sorry. Love you. But you find someone that's like, I got nothing on my feet. Perfection right here. And what does everyone start doing? Tomatoes, bananas, slip and slides. There's something in the human condition, because probably we are all one, right? That it's like, ooh, if it's not going to come from here, awakening, that's always my prayer, is sweet Spirit, let me get my awakenings in gentle, easy ways. I am listening. I am open. I choose not to take these things out on my body. I choose not to take them out in turbulence in my life. But let me see them from the inside out. But since we're all one, our experiences, our growth can come from all over. It can come from this global agenda that's going on, this global experience that we're having. It can come from politics in our nations. Who's had some turbulent times in our nation? You know, presencing what's on the agenda, what's up for us to process. How quickly, how easily, how spiritually are we metabolizing when we get triggered? Because each moment we have our energy to share. And we only get that moment in each moment, the present moment, the one moment right now. The more time I spend it in resentment, attack, anger, lack of compassion, fill in the blank, whatever it is for you, whatever it is for me, the more time I spend in that, the more time I create from that. And the more time I spend it in mindfulness, the more time I spend it in compassion, in love, in guided action, in centered being, the more I am co-creating of my Christ potential. The more I am co-creating of my divine inheritance. The more I am being what I want to see more of on this planet. So here's the deal about spiritual growth. We spend so much time discovering and uncovering our stuff, and certainly that is useful. When we've not done that work, we often lack accountability. And we often wind up repeating unhelpful patterns. So that work is important and it's powerful. But imagine for a moment that you were locked in a room. And I don't want to keep going back to this waterboarding, but it just keeps coming up. And that was about to happen. Imagine. And this could be a spiritual room, right? So it could be a room where you locked yourself in and threw away the key, or that you have the idea in consciousness that someone could do something to you and they put you there. Circumstance, situation, an engagement, a relationship, whatever it is. Imagine for a moment you're locked in that room. And for those of you that thrive under pressure, make it bad. How would you spend your time? Would you spend your time investigating how you got there, or ideating how you'll get out? Would you spend your time investigating how you got there, or ideating how to get out? Friends, this is the question of the moment, of each present moment. Investigating is about what happened. It is technically carrying out a systematic or formal inquiry to discover and examine the facts to discover and establish the truth. So it's looking at what is and trying to get to the facts, trying to establish the truth, trying to figure out how we got there. Very common, right? Very ordinary. The most ordinary of the human condition. It's what our natural response is. But ideating is about what you create. Ideating is to form an idea of, to imagine, or to conceive. This is co-creating. We know that everything began as a thought, everything begins as a thought, and we know that energy follows attention. That energy follows attention. So in times that we are triggered, where is my energy going? It's going to where my attention is going. Is my attention going to metabolizing and transforming? Or is my attention going to soothing the ego, to resting in unhelpful and unhealthy thinking? We can focus on what's absent, what was missing, what's problematic. What in the world got me here? What in the world got the world here? What in the world got all of us here? Or we can focus on presencing. The presence of what here would make a difference. Presencing the moment. What does this have for me? What's the idea here that I'm ready to receive that would make a difference? What more could this be? The presence of what could make a difference, because energy follows attention. See, most of life is a reaction. It's sad, but it really is. Most of life is a reaction. We tend to be able to see that more in others than we can see it in ourselves. You know, has anyone ever done this to you? That's like, look at your face. Everyone right now, look at your face. Come on. The best you can do, if you have a nose like mine, you can see the sides of it. You can see a little bit of your lips, and if you really try, well, I don't know. It'd have to be pretty long. But try to see your face. See your face. Now look at everyone else's faces. You can never firsthand see your own face. Never firsthand see your own face. You can see a reflection of it. You can see a picture of it, a snapshot. You can see a video of it. But you can never firsthand experience looking at your own face. How is that not like the spiritual blinders, like blinders that we have on? Right? So we live in a sense in reaction. We live in a sense from triggers. We live in a sense in this state, in an ego state of consciousness, or what Charles Fillmore calls the carnal mind, in a place where we don't, and even coming from the subconscious mind, in a place where we don't always see our stuff. So how do we make that not bad? We got to practice some tools. Jonathan Swift said, "May you live all the days of your life." May you live all the days of your life. The difference between living them and reacting. Joe Dispenza said, "Reason this, when you think from your past memories, you can only create past experiences. As all of the knowns in your life cause your brain to think and feel in familiar ways, thus creating knowable outcomes, you continually reaffirm your life as you know it. And since your brain is equal to your environment, then each morning your senses plug you into the same reality and initiate the same stream of consciousness." So as aware as we think we may have become at any point in time, as deep as we think we've gone, even if we've gone into a whole bunch of the past lives and we know our names, that's kind of a joke, you know. You can laugh if you're in unity. I'm undecided on that one. As we are aware as we have become, we are a breeding ground in our brains. We're a breeding ground for reaction, and the only person we can't see is ourselves. So, to be a birthplace for spiritual action, we have to shift our attention. To be a birthplace for spiritual action, we have to shift our attention. Joe Dispenza also says, psychologists tell us that by the time we're in our mid-30s, our identity and personality will be completely formed. This means that for those of us over 35, we have memorized a select set of behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, emotional reactions, habits, skills, associative memories, conditioned responses, and perceptions that are now subconsciously programmed within us. Those programs are running us, even if we have done a lot of work, because the body has become the mind. This means that we will think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, react in identical ways, behave in the same manner, believe in the same dogmas, and perceive reality in the same ways. About 95% of who we are by midlife is a series of subconscious programs that have become automatic. Pretty depressing, right? He goes on to say, driving a car, brushing our teeth, overeating when we're stressed, worrying about the future, judging our friends, complaining about our lives, blaming our parents, not believing in ourselves, and insisting on being chronically unhappy, just to name a few. I'm sure we could all fill in the blank with a journal page of more. Scripture tells us that if the blind lead the blind, we'll fall into a ditch, and that we are to cast off darkness and put on an armor of light. So what if that darkness is not so much an energy outside of us, but what if that darkness is blinders? And that when we have blinders on, we're in darkness. And we're here to cast off that darkness, to cast off those blinders, and to put on an armor of light. And so physically, if we can't do that physically, we're called to do that spiritually, eh? So how do we do that spiritually? we recognize that most of what we're in is drama. Most of what we're in is a story, and usually it's a story about a story. Most of what happens and what we react to is just made up in our minds. Have you seen that about yourself? I've seen that about myself. If we haven't seen that about ourselves, it's not a bad thing. It's not a curse. It is like your birthday. It is your spiritual birthday. If you haven't noticed yet how much of life you've made up in your own mind, it is your birthday. Here's a doubt of mine. A doubt of mine is that I doubt that the limbic system and the endocrine system know the difference between unresolved forgiveness work, between the things that annoy you on the street, between the traumas that happen in your mind, the traumas that you see that are, made up, and something that's real. I think they all react in the same way. If you've ever seen the film The Living Matrix, it goes into using mind science to create in our lives. And in fact, one of my favorite things from that movie is they did a little study, and they had people that exercised in real life, and then they had people that sat on the couch and exercised in their minds, and they both progressed. I always thought, I want to be that couch girl. But then I realized when I started practicing it that doing all that in your mind is just as hard. You might as well do it because you got to sit there and you're like, okay, now I'm doing a back walkover. Okay. But our brains react similarly. That's why it matters what we put in our being, does it not? That's what matters, why it matters what comes into our heart, what comes into our eyes, what comes into our nervous system. That's why it matters. We're rehearsing. And if we're rehearsing something that's toxic, we're not doing ourselves or our world a favor. So what would it feel like when we get triggered to have tools? What would it feel like, instead of reacting in ways that we know keep us in limitation? So just think of one. Just think of one way. Just think of something that irks you, even if it's me. Especially if it's me, actually. It'll make the sanctuary energy better. Think of something that irks you. And think, just for a moment, what would it be like if I experienced that from now on, and instead I felt peaceful? Instead, I created space. I felt mindful. I felt love, I felt compassion, I felt kindness. When critical, what would it be like to feel peace or to feel love when you see or hear even that thing, whatever it is, that even that, go to the dark side for a moment. Even when it's that, only you know. You don't have to tell anybody what that is. Only you have to know. But can you believe in the possibility that even when that happens, your body being, your system, would not have a reaction, but instead you would spend that one moment, the present moment, the only moment that you have, in co-creation and in generation. Generating what you want, putting your attention to what you want more of, to create energy. Bruce Lipton says, when you're processing with your brain, you're broadcasting fields. When you're processing with your brain, you're broadcasting fields. There's a little thing going around the internet that says 1 minute of anger weakens your immune system for 4 to 5 hours. 1 minute of anger weakens your immune system for 4 to 5 hours. Some of you are like, have my keys, honey, I'm not driving anymore. Take the keys, taking the bus. 1 minute of laughter, though, it says, boosts your immune system for 24 hours. 1 minute of laughter boosts your immune system for 24 hours. Yeah. Go for it. Get it all in. I'm going to time you. So are we ready to take the plunge? Are we ready to be serious about our spiritual practice and to be co-creators? Next Sunday, and yes, you get to wait till next Sunday, we're going to go into some practical tools. Some practical tools that we can apply in each moment. Have you ever been too triggered to do anything different? Have you ever been too depressed to get yourself help? Have you ever been too, whatever it is, to be able to wake up from a moment and put anything else in there instead, anything better? If you've ever been stuck, then next Sunday we're going to explore some practical tools. That's what Charles Fillmore was all about, some practical tools. And if he was standing here right now, he would be looking into quantum physics, he would be looking into mental science, he would be looking into all of the latest developments in every field, in every area, saying, what can we do now with what we know? He would be on fire right now with the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, biological technology that is available to each and every one of us. Are we ready? Is it worth it? Namaste.